My name is Sierra Whitlow. I used to think I was a lucky wife. With a beautiful house by the river in Charleston, a successful husband who always held me when I trembled with anxiety, and a cousin I considered family. But then, one phone call, one I thought had ended, shattered my entire world. She actually believes it. We just need one more psych evaluation, then the assets are cleanly transferred. That was my husband's voice. And the other person, it was his cousin. The same one who used to call me sis. Have you ever trusted someone enough to let them decide your entire life? If you've ever had a moment when you doubted the person you love most, leave a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to hear the next part. Because my story is only beginning. I don't remember exactly when things started to shift. Maybe it was that Tuesday morning after my father's funeral when Grant made me a cup of peppermint tea and said in a soft voice, "Don't force yourself, let me handle things. Taking time off might be good." I didn't object. Honestly, I didn't have the strength to object to anything. Losing my father was a blow I wasn't prepared for. The man who always believed in me, who taught me how to spot truth and deception in design plans, how to negotiate my own worth, now lay still in an oak coffin, leaving me a fortune and a hollow space no words could fill. Grant stepped in like a savior. He moved in full-time, scheduled therapy sessions for me, monitored my diet, and reminded me to sleep early. Everyone said I was lucky to have a husband who cared, who sacrificed. I used to believe that too. Landon moved in 2 weeks later, saying he was there to help us out for a while since his company was struggling. I had once co-signed his college applications. He used to call me Sierra and rolled in his suitcase saying, "I'll only be here a few weeks, help Grant take care of you until you're feeling better." But that temporary stay stretched into almost a year. My office was cleared out and turned into a document storage room. My personal laptop got accidentally spilled on. Emails from old clients went unanswered because Grant said I needed complete rest. "Even one small project could keep you up all night," he said, gently rubbing my shoulder. "I don't want to see you burn out." Back then I felt grateful. He was right. I wasn't eating. I couldn't sleep well. I wandered around the house, occasionally breaking down in tears when I saw the leather chair my father left behind. Little by little, I felt like a stranger to myself. I used to be composed, detail-oriented, emotionally stable, and yet one light teasing remark from Landon about my wearing a nightgown out of season could make me blush and choke up. I wasn't angry, just disappointed, and that made me feel guilty. Eventually, I stopped going outside. Every time I opened the living room window, Landon would shout from downstairs, "Didn't the doctor say you're light sensitive? Don't make things worse for yourself." I used to snap back, but then I just felt too tired. The prescriptions from Dr. Evan Brooks, someone Grant had recommended, kept changing, the doses increasing. He said I showed signs of adjustment disorder and needed long-term monitoring. One day, I told Grant I wanted to stop the meds and try yoga again. He stayed silent for a long time, then said, "You know, one of the most serious symptoms is patients refusing treatment, right?" Nodded, took the pills, and believed that maybe something really was wrong with me. I used to trust people because they said they loved me, and because they said they were protecting me from myself. If you're still listening, have you ever wondered, were their words truly out of love, or just a way to make you stop trusting your own voice? It took me nearly a year to realize I was living in a prison without bars, and they had locked that door using the very kindness they paraded in front of me every day. I didn't take my pills that morning. I had fallen asleep after a night of dreaming my father was standing on the porch, calling my name but never turning around. When I woke up, Grant had already gone to work and the pill bottle was still sitting on the table. I thought I'd take them after breakfast, but I kept putting it off. Until I noticed my mind felt startlingly clear. I stood by the window. Light filtered through the white curtains, soft, not triggering a headache like it usually did. No buzzing in my ears, no sensation of watching my life through a fogged-up pane of glass. For the first time in months, I felt truly here. And that same morning, like a veil lifting, I remembered something important. I had unconsciously avoided. I hadn't personally checked my inheritance account since my father passed. "I've handled it," Grant once said, his warm hand on my back when I hesitated to ask. "I transferred the short-term investments to a financial planning firm for better liquidity. Trust me, okay?" I didn't have the energy to doubt. But that morning I put on a cardigan, tied my hair back, and drove to the bank like any regular woman, handling her own affairs. No notice, no appointment, just one goal: to check everything. As I stepped into the lobby, the receptionist gave me a familiar smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitlow. How can we assist you today?" "I'd like to review the full transaction history of my inheritance account," I said. My voice was a little hoarse but firm. She paused briefly, then nodded. "Of course, I'll take you to a private room with our branch manager." 10 minutes later, I was seated in a glass-walled room with Margaret Hudson, the woman who had worked with my father for nearly 20 years. She still wore her thin-rimmed glasses, small frame, polite eyes. "I was a bit surprised to see you today," she said, opening her laptop and glancing at me. "Last time we spoke was about 8 months ago, when the account transfer process was finalized." I shook my head. "I don't remember that." "You don't recall the meeting?" "I don't remember coming here, and I definitely don't remember signing any power of attorney forms." Margaret didn't answer right away. The screen loaded the transaction history, and immediately my stomach dropped. There had been at least 6 large transfers, each ranging from $50,000 to $150,000. Withdrawn from my account and wired to a company called Barton Equity Holdings LLC. Why? I frowned. "What is this company?" "A privately registered firm in Delaware," Margaret replied after a few clicks. "The listed agent is Mr. Landon Reyes." "Landon? My husband's cousin?" "Yes," she blinked. "According to the records, these transactions were conducted under legal authorization. The paperwork was signed here in front of me and a legal representative." I could barely breathe. "I've never sat in this room." Margaret turned the screen toward me. A scanned PDF of a power of attorney document, bearing a signature that looked like mine. It was my handwriting. But I knew I had never written that line. I closed my eyes. The only time I might have signed something while not fully aware was one afternoon after Dr. Brooks adjusted my meds and said I needed to sign a confirmation for the treatment plan. I had signed without reading carefully. Everything was blurry then, like I was standing underwater. "Mrs. Margaret," I said, my voice trembling, "what if I told you that signature was taken while I wasn't mentally sound? What if I was over-medicated? What if someone was deliberately building a case that I'm unfit to manage my finances?" Her face softened. No longer stern. It was sympathetic. "So, Sierra, did you come with anyone today?" "Well, I'm afraid I can't freeze the account or reverse the transactions. The full authorization is active, and any opposing action would require your husband's consent." "No," I whispered. "He's working with Landon. They're taking my money." Margaret leaned back, silent for a moment, then spoke slowly. "If what you're saying is true, you need a lawyer and an independent medical assessment. But first you need to leave here before they find out you were..." "Why wait?" "Because if they really are building a mental instability narrative around you, showing up unannounced and questioning the bank will only strengthen their story." I stared at her, and for the first time I felt real fear. Not of losing money, but of losing myself. I didn't leave the bank through the front entrance. After Margaret quietly warned that any move could be twisted into paranoid behavior, she looked at me for a long moment, then stood up and walked toward the door, as if to retrieve a file. But I knew it was a signal. She didn't fully believe me, but she had seen too many women dismissed as unstable for challenging the system. As she passed me, she whispered so softly her lips barely moved, "Emergency exit at the end of the hallway. There might be an alarm, but I'll disable it for 10 seconds. I didn't look back, just lowered my head, grabbed my purse, and walked fast. The door swung open into the back parking lot. A blast of cold air hit my face and jolted me wide awake. I had no car. Grant had driven it to the office that morning. I didn't have much cash, only one debit card that hadn't been compromised yet. The first thing I did was pull out my phone, my hand shaking so badly it took 3 tries to hit the right name. Julia Mercer. Hello? Her voice was the same as always, calm, slightly husky, and making me feel like I was standing in a courtroom. It's me, Sierra. Oh my God, Sierra, are you okay? I didn't know where to begin. I spoke fast, broken. I need help. I can't explain it all over the phone. Can we meet? Where are you? I glanced quickly around the parking lot and read out the bank's name. 15 minutes. Don't move. Julia's car pulled into the lot right on time, precise and quiet like she always was. The door opened and I slid into the passenger seat, my hands still clutching the purse strap like someone holding on to something without knowing what it is, knowing if I let go, I'll fall apart. You don't have to say anything if you're not ready, but if someone's got you running out of a bank at noon, I'm guessing it's serious. I reached into my bag and pulled out the prescription bottle I'd been taking. Do you know anyone in medicine, someone who can verify what this is? Julia opened the cap and read the label. I don't need a doctor to know something's off. She snapped a photo of the label and sent it to a pharmacist friend. While we wait, tell me everything. Start with your husband. We sat in a small cafe near the office district, where Julia knew the owner and could borrow a private back room. When I told her everything, from the call where Grant revealed the scheme to the shady transfers and the bank's reaction, Julia didn't interrupt, didn't overreact. She listened. Closely. I don't remember signing any power of attorney, I said finally as she pulled out her laptop, opened her email and said, Let's start here. Start what? I asked. Gathering everything, your emails, medical records, banking history, any legal documents Grant ever had you sign. If you're telling the truth and I believe you are, then there's a trail of fragments we can piece together into the full picture. A notification pinged. A message from the pharmacist. Julia skimmed it, then looked up at me. This isn't antidepressant medication. It's a low-dose sedative, typically used to manage delusions or emotional dysregulation. Mislabeling its purpose is a serious ethical violation. My throat tightened. I remembered the times Grant carefully placed a glass of water in front of me and said, Drink it, you need it to sleep well. Not to help me sleep, to make me foggy. We returned to the temporary apartment Julia was renting as a private office for civil dispute cases. There, she gave me a separate laptop, a quiet workspace, and a new email account completely disconnected from the system Grant once helped manage. File after file appeared. Tax notices, transfer agreements, email confirmations from the bank. I started finding messages I'd supposedly sent, but hadn't written. How could they? I murmured. Julia pointed at the sender icon. They used an email account already logged in on a shared computer, or worse, spoofed your home IP to create a self-sent trail. Every line I read felt like a fresh wound, but at the same time, I was more alert than I had been in months. That night, as Julia brewed tea and draped a soft blanket over my shoulders, she said gently, Sierra, I don't think you're weak, but I need you to understand this. Emotional manipulators don't need to scream in your face that you're wrong. They only need to repeat it long enough until you believe it. I stayed there, surrounded by stacks of paper, my mind spinning but unusually clear. I used to believe I needed protection, but those people didn't protect me. They were writing a story in which I was the one being managed, and they were the heroes stepping in when I broke. I returned home on Monday morning, carrying a bag of almond cookies from the old bakery Grant liked. He was in the kitchen when I walked in, peeling ginger and playing soft jazz in the background. The scene, dutiful husband making tea for his wife, looked like a snippet from a Happy Life commercial. He looked up startled. Sierra? You didn't say you were coming back early. I smiled, lowering my head to hide my eyes. I missed home. I set my purse on the chair, walked closer, and watched him pour hot water into the pot, steam clouding the mirrored backsplash. I took a deep breath. In my mind, I replayed Julia's advice from the night before. If you want to flip the script, you have to make them believe you're exactly what they say you are, fragile, easy to guide, and slowly losing control. I've been worried about you all week, Grant said, resting a hand on my shoulder, gently, like I might fall apart. "Thank you for coming back." I nodded. "I think I need to resume treatment." His eyes lit up, a relief he couldn't hide. "Did you bring your medication?" "Yes, and I'll take it, every dose." 3 days later, Dr. Brooks came to the house for a follow-up. He wore a white shirt, that same dated pine cologne clinging to his collar. I sat upright on the couch, hair tied back, my face pale, exactly like someone who appeared unstable but trying. Grant sat beside me, his hand resting on the back of mine. The doctor opened his notebook, his voice low and steady. "Have you been experiencing insomnia again lately?" "I have trouble keeping track of time, and sometimes I hear footsteps when no one's home." He wrote something down. Grant gently squeezed my hand, not looking at me but at the doctor. "And the panic attacks?" he continued. "Increasing," I said slowly. I feel like I'm living outside my body." Dr. Brooks nodded, unsurprised. He turned to Grant. "We may want to consider enhanced medical supervision. She needs more frequent monitoring." "I've been thinking about that," Grant replied. "I've already prepared the paperwork to request temporary conservatorship. I just want to make sure she's safe." Completely reasonable. I pretended not to hear a thing. Inside, I counted every tick of the clock, every passing second, every sentence tightening around my neck like a noose. That night, when Grant called his personal attorney, a man named Harmon I had only met once at a friend's wedding, I sat by the window, pretending to read a book. "I think now's the right time," Grant said over the phone. "She's stable on the outside but unraveling inside. I can gather additional medical notes, even from the family physician if needed." I could hear the faint chuckle at the end of his sentence. Cold. Inside my coat pocket, my phone was recording. At the same time, Julia messaged me. "The emergency protection request has been filed, but the judge is out of town. It'll take 72 hours to review. Stall. Do not let them admit you." I replied, "I'm doing exactly that." The next day, Grant brought home a paper bag from the pharmacy. I took it, my hand trembling slightly. "Thank you," I whispered. "You always think of me." He smiled, kissed my forehead. "I just want you to come back to yourself." "Ill do I." That night, I cut the pill in half, then slipped the other half into a plastic pouch I hid inside the lining of my coat. I didn't take any of it, but I still yawned, acted sleepy, early, so he'd believe the meds were kicking in. The next day, I started trailing off mid-sentence, dropping utensils, wandering the house with vague excuses like, "I can't remember what I came to get." "It's getting worse," Grant told Dr. Brooks in a video call I happened to walk past. "We should act soon," the doctor said. "If we wait too long, it'll be harder to prove she's incapacitated enough for medical intervention." "Next Monday," Grant confirmed. "I'll bring her to your office." I stepped quickly onto the balcony, pretending I hadn't heard. Inside, only one thought remained. 4 more days. I need to live like someone losing control, so I can flip the script they've written. And I knew when that moment came, my hand wouldn't shake. I'd do exactly what they never thought I was sane enough to do. Take everything back. The letter I wrote by hand, on old floral paper my father once used for Christmas cards, had only 3 lines. "I'm sorry, I'm tired, I don't want to be a burden anymore." Signed, Sierra. I left it on the living room table, beside a half-finished cup of tea and a crushed pill dusted next to it like a trace of a total mental breakdown. In the corner, the mini camera Julia had hidden behind a wooden-framed painting had already started recording, capturing me walking out the back door in a gray cardigan, without my phone, wallet, or anything else. It was Saturday night. I had 48 hours before Grant took the next step in his care plan. Julia picked me up in her old SUV, headlights off, engine humming low like a whisper. She didn't say a word when I got in. Just looked at me for a long time before placing her hand on my shoulder and whispering, "It begins." We drove straight to the lake cabin once owned by Julia's father west of Asheville. No one in Grant's legal circle or Landon's investment network knew it existed. No Wi-Fi, no outdoor cameras, no cell signal. Just trees, water, and silence. Upstairs, Julia set up her laptop to stream footage from the hidden camera she'd installed 3 days earlier, with help from a cybersecurity expert she once worked with. We sat in the dark as the screen lit up, showing Grant entering the living room, his hands trembling as he picked up the letter I'd left. He collapsed into a chair, buried his face in his hands, then looked up with a perfectly staged look of horror. His eyes were red, his fingers clutched the paper. He called the police. I think my wife killed herself. She left a note, disappeared. She's been in treatment. Her doctor said she's not well, please. His voice cracked on cue like a Broadway actor. Not too dramatic, just enough for anyone listening to believe in the desperate devotion of a grieving husband. Julia didn't take her eyes off the screen. I felt a chill run down my spine. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I said, my voice barely there. "I didn't think actually watching someone mourn me like I'm dead would hurt this much." The next morning, the local news aired the story. Missing woman, wife of prominent attorney Grant Whitlow, left home after a period of mental health treatment. Family fear she may be in danger. My image, faint, distant eyes, appeared on screen for 2 minutes. Grant gave a brief statement during a small press conference on his front lawn. "I just want her to come home. I don't care what happened, she's my whole world." Behind him stood Landon, silent, wearing dark glasses and a designer suit that couldn't hide his ease. That afternoon, Julia played me an audio clip from the mic hidden in Grant's home office. Landon's voice. "So, what happens next?" A beer can popped open, Grant's voice again with a quiet laugh. "We liquidate the house, the secondary properties. No one questions 2 grieving men. The trust was designed to move fast in cases of mental incapacity or death. Dad-in-law was thorough, but I'm thorougher." "That why not you?" "And the insurance?" Landon asked. "Already in motion. Her therapist, our dear Dr. Brooks, signed off on her deterioration trajectory 3 weeks ago. It'll all go through. She was the perfect storm, vulnerable, unwell, and rich." I turned away, trying not to vomit. Julia hit save on the recording, placed her hand on my shoulder again. Silent. I was living like a ghost, and they were enjoying life built on my grave. That night I wrote a few lines in my journal, each letter steady. "May staged a death. I'm rebuilding a life, and this time, they won't see what hit them until everything falls apart." Julia closed her laptop, sat beside me, and handed me a cup of chamomile tea. "Tomorrow I'll contact someone at the court. Once you're dead, my emergency powers kick in. All transactions will be temporarily frozen. And what do you think they'll do next?" She gave a dry smile. "They'll get cocky, and that is exactly when they slip." I looked out over the still lake, the breeze brushing across the surface. My mind wasn't wrestling with right or wrong, love or hate. There was only one thing I was certain of. I would not forgive. 3 days after I disappeared, Grant walked into the house carrying an expensive bottle of red wine and a fresh cigar, like he had just closed a lucrative deal. In reality, he had just sold the log cabin in Montana that my father left me. The one place I'd once said was the only place I truly felt at peace. And he sold it like he'd never heard me say that. The fingertip-sized camera, hidden by Julia in a cactus pot beside the liquor shelf, started recording right as Grant popped the cork. No one else was in the living room. Just him and his naked ego. He raised his glass, looking into the empty space as if playing to an imaginary audience. "Here's to the grieving widower," he chuckled, dragging out his words like a second-rate TV drama hero. "I drugged my wife, convinced the world she was insane, and now I'm the victim? God bless America." He clinked his glass to the air, then downed it. Julia and I watched from the cabin, the laptop screen glowing in the flicker of a small fire behind us. Julia said only one sentence. "We've got the clip." The next day, the camera in Grant's office, mounted discreetly under the wall clock across from his desk, captured the meeting Julia had predicted. Landon showed up unannounced. He slammed the door shut behind him, his face flushed. "What the hell are you doing?" Landon growled. Grant remained seated, feet up on the desk, casually spinning the silver pen I had given him on our 3rd anniversary. "What exactly are you referring to?" Grant asked lazily. "The Montana house," Landon snapped. "We had a deal. A quarter of it is mine." "Right," Grant nodded. "A quarter of whatever I decide to split." Landon's face darkened. I carried half this plan from day one, from finding Dr. Brooks to editing documents to maintaining the whole Sierra's unstable narrative. You think I did that for free? Grant shrugged. You were paid in silence, and with the trust that I wouldn't flip on you if things went south. Landon stepped closer, face inches from Grant's. Maybe I should flip before you do, could get a lighter sentence. Go ahead, tell the police you helped me drug my wife, fake her mental health records, forge financial documents. Who do you think they'll believe? A lawyer with 3 major case wins this year, or a freeloading cousin $800,000 in debt? Landon slammed a file onto the desk. I'm not stupid. I have copies of emails, bank transfer logs. You didn't erase everything. Grant stared at him for a long moment, then said slowly, what if the plan fails? What if someone sees Sierra somewhere? What if she comes back? Landon paused. What are you thinking? We have a plan B, Grant shrugged. A car accident, late-night driving, a tree falls suddenly, a cliff. My wife has a history of instability. That'll help. You're insane, Landon stepped back. No, Grant's gaze sharpened. I'm prepared, because if she returns and blows this open, it's not just me going down. It's you too. Landon swallowed hard, his hand trembling. You're not the man I used to know. And what are you? Grant narrowed his eyes. A moral compass? After everything you've done? Where exactly do you think the ethical line is? Landon turned, pushed the door open, and left a cold silence behind him. He'll kill me if I come back, I whispered. No, Julia said. They won't get the chance. We've got enough. Not yet, I shook my head. Not enough. I needed more than evidence. I needed the world to know that the danger wasn't the woman who once took antidepressants. It was the man in the tailored suit, holding legal guardianship, who knew how to cry on cue and was calculating how to make someone disappear forever. I entered the courtroom through the side witness entrance, wearing a light gray sweater, hair neatly tied back, no makeup, no drama. I didn't need to look like a victim. I needed to look like myself. Outside, the press had already set up tents. Cameras lined the halls all the way to the steps of Fulton County Court. News of my return from the dead, accompanied by a preliminary investigative report, had stunned the city. Inside, Julia placed a dark leather briefcase on the long wooden table. The click of the latch opening echoed like a gavel. Your Honor, the lead attorney said, we submit the following for the court record. A video and audio recording of the defendant Grant Wellington's direct confession, financial records detailing unlawful transfers, a lab analysis of substances found in the victim's bloodstream, and email correspondence between the defendant and a licensed psychiatrist discussing the fabrication of medical records for the purpose of securing a legal conservatorship. I sat in the front row of the witness section, hands clasped tightly in my lap. When the recording played, I drugged my wife and convinced the world she was insane. I stared directly at Grant. He turned away. I didn't blink. 20 minutes later, internal affairs officers walked into Grant's law office to serve the arrest warrant. Julia and I sat waiting across the street in a black SUV, windows tinted, engine running. From a distance, I saw Grant still at his desk, sleeves rolled up, writing something. Maybe his final note in a life built on arrogance. The lead officer read him the charges. Grant jumped up, waving his hands. There's a mistake here. She's emotionally unstable. Her doctor confirmed it. I'll verified, the officer replied. Cuffs ready. You have the right to remain silent. Grant turned to the window. I'm not sure if he saw me, but I recognized that look. It was the face of a man who had just realized. He no longer controlled the narrative. Landon was arrested 3 hours later at the airport. He had booked a one-way flight to Panama, carrying a duffel bag and several unsigned contracts. Officers stopped him at the security gate. We have a warrant to search your personal belongings and electronic devices, the agent said. Landon didn't resist, but his face turned pale when they opened his laptop and found scanned documents tied to years of financial fraud. On the hard drive was an unencrypted audio file. Grant's recorded Plan B if I returned. At the first court hearing, Dr. Brooks showed up in a dark blue suit, head bowed, saying nothing. A digitally signed email from him to Grant spoke volumes. I've adjusted the dosage per your request, but I remind you again. If this is discovered, I cannot protect you. Prosecutors submitted more evidence. Cash payments from Grant to Brooks' secondary account, $32,000 over 6 months. His medical license was permanently revoked immediately after. Georgia's medical board issued the decision within an hour of their emergency session. I said nothing throughout the entire hearing, but when asked to speak, I said only 3 sentences. I was never out of control, I was never paranoid, and I will not stay silent anymore. I turned to look at Julia, who not only believed me but staked her career to protect me before I even believed in myself. Her eyes shimmered like she had just witnessed someone return from a place no one expected them to survive. I didn't return to architecture. I knew I couldn't re-enter the old world, where every project launch required me to stand next to the man who once poisoned me and called it shared success. I chose to begin again, not to prove anything, but to build what never existed. A space where people like me didn't have to prove they weren't crazy just to be heard. The Whitlow Trust Project was founded that fall, in a weathered red brick building outside Atlanta. The ground floor served as intake walls adorned with hand-drawn artwork from women who had once been imprisoned in their own lives. A small corkboard near the end of the hallway was filled with notes. I'm not weak for trusting the wrong people. They silenced me, but I chose to rewrite the story. Julia drafted most of the legal framework for the center. She worked in the window side office, surrounded by law books and state codes. One time, she said, I never thought my knowledge could be used for something that actually means this much. I smiled and placed my hand on her shoulder. Julia, you're not just writing law. You're rewriting the rules. Thomas Rowe didn't show up at a seminar or in a news segment. He appeared on a rainy afternoon while I was stacking files in the storage room. I have experience managing data security systems for nonprofits, he said, his voice low and calm. But the reason I'm here is because my mother was once in a marriage like yours. I looked at him for a long moment, not to test his sincerity, but because I recognized something rare, the look of a man who wasn't trying to understand me, but standing beside me, quietly and clearly. Thomas never asked about my past. Never told me to forgive, never pushed me to move on some prescribed emotional timeline. He patiently built our anonymous hotline system so women wouldn't need to share their real names in order to receive help. When the media started reaching out, I turned down every interview. I knew what they wanted, the story of the wife who faked her death to catch her husband. A headline that sells views, a scandalous hook. I didn't need to be washed clean. I didn't need to be redeemed. When a reporter tried to force their way into the center, Julia stepped right up to the glass door. This isn't a place that defines victims by how many times they've survived. This is where they no longer have to survive alone. I stood inside, watching Julia's silhouette shrink in the misty rain, her beige coat trailing behind her. There was something in her stride that made me realize we were both living a version of life someone else once tried to write for us. One evening, as I was organizing old case files, Thomas stood in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. There's something I've always wanted to ask but never did. I looked up, warm light settling over both of us. If there had been no Julia, no evidence, if nothing had come to light, what would you have done? I looked at him for a while, then smiled. Not a smile to comfort someone else, but one I had kept folded away in my chest for years. I still would have walked away. No one would have known I survived, but I would have known. Thomas didn't say anything else. He handed me the tea, brushing my hand, not to hold on, just to remind me I didn't need to brace myself anymore. I stood backstage, quietly watching the seats fill up. Women, some with gray in their hair, some with babies strapped to their chests, sat shoulder to shoulder under the warm glow of the auditorium lights. They hadn't come for an inspiring speech. They came because they knew exactly how silence could kill a person. Someone from the event crew came over to adjust my mic, then asked in a whisper, "You would like me to read your introduction?" I shook my head. Let me walk out myself. No one needs to open the door for someone who's already been pushed out of her own life. As the stage lights came on, I stepped forward, slowly but steadily. There were no suspicious stares. No whispers of, "That's the woman who faked her death." Only applause, sparse at first, then spreading. I stopped at the podium, no need for notes. I had lived every line of my story. It didn't need rewriting to become a talk. I started with a question. How many of you here have been called too sensitive? A few hands went up. Then more, a whole row, then the entire room. They told me I was overreacting when I asked my husband why he kept deleting messages. They told me I was pathologically suspicious when the doctor prescribed meds I never approved. They told me I was paranoid for standing inside the home I built and feeling like a stranger was playing my role. I paused. And then one day, I really did start to doubt myself. Because no one needs to lock you in an institution to make you lose your mind. They only need to make you lonely enough to believe they're the only ones telling the truth. A woman stood up, her voice trembling. Did you ever think you were truly losing it? I used to think I was weak. I used to think I was the problem. But then I realized I wasn't weak. I just trusted people who were really good at pretending. The room fell still. I looked straight into the live broadcast camera, fully aware the next sentence would be clipped, shared, dissected, debated. But I didn't flinch. If someone tries to make you doubt yourself, if they make you apologize for feelings you didn't choose, if they turn love into a psychological test, then that's not love. That's manipulation. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was the sound of people seeing themselves in a mirror that had never been placed in the center of the crowd before. I turned and walked off stage without looking back. On my way to the car, a young woman caught up to me. Her eyes were red, her notebook clutched tightly in one hand. Miss Sierra, I just wanted to say, I believe you. And I believe me too. I stopped and touched her hand gently. No promises, no forced encouragement. You don't need anyone to believe you for it to be real. Just remember, don't call yourself a victim. Because some scars aren't on the skin, they live in the silence we endured for far too long. Have you ever been in a room where everyone was laughing and talking, yet you felt like you were slowly disappearing? Have you ever been made to question your own memory, your instincts, or even your sanity by the person you trusted most? If you have, then my story, even if it's not the same, may have touched something inside you. I'm not telling it to be praised as strong. I'm telling it because I know there are people still enduring quietly, thinking they're too sensitive, that they're making things up. But the truth is, when someone makes you doubt yourself, that's not love. It's power disguised as closeness. What are your thoughts on Sierra's journey? Have you ever witnessed or lived through emotional manipulation in your family, your marriage, or your workplace? Don't hesitate to share in the comments, not to vent, but so others who are still silent know they're not alone. And if you care about real stories, about courage in moments that seem invisible, about how ordinary women stand up and rewrite their lives, don't forget to follow this channel. There are still so many pieces of life waiting to be told, in the voice of truth and through the hearts of those who no longer accept silence as survival. See you in the next story.